Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Better Basics Podcast, the realest fitness podcast on the planet. Dylan, it's so great to see you as always, buddy. How are things going by you?
Things are great. Been a really nice stretch of fall weather, and I haven't found myself getting lost in the woods recently, so things are good for me.
Oh, all right. I see what you did there. Well, we can tell the people that story in a moment. But I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the fall festival, Fall Fest that happened up here in Door County this past week. As you know, this is like probably the biggest party that they throw up this way. Sister Bay, the town that hosts it, is like, I think it's like 1,000 people, like year-round residents live there. But they said that there were going to be like 50,000 coming to Sister Bay for Fall Fest, and the weather was like unbelievable. It was like 65 and sunny. So it goes all weekend long, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And it is a big-ass party culminating on Sunday with a soapbox derby, where all the kids in town race down the hill in these soap boxes, like little like derby cars that they've made. And you know, my son Archer, that's his second year doing it. He lost to the defending champion, but it is the coolest freaking thing. It's such a fun weekend, man. It was really cool. So I am recovering a little bit. I had a little fun, but, obviously, like, dad life, it's not the same as it used to be. But still found some time to have a little fun.
Yeah, I was up there last year. Watched Archer's inaugural soapbox race. Did any kids totally biff it this year? Last year there was a pretty violent accident.
No accidents that I saw this year. They do put hay bales up and down the street, but yeah, last year a little girl got a little wild. But everybody's okay. So yeah,
good. I'm happy to hear that. That's no joke. I was surprised by how quickly those little things went. So.
They were flying.
Is he still eligible next year to finally claim his title?
Well, he will age-wise, yes. I think size-wise, he's a big dude.
Yeah, he's got his dad's genes.
Yeah, so he had a little trouble just like fitting into the car like lengthwise this year, and I do think we talked about it. It seems like this will probably be the last year unless I start to do some research on how to get my hands on like a custom built car for a 9-year-old giant, which, I mean, I guess never say never, but knowing my handyman skills, it's probably a never.
So tell us about the woods. So it's Fall Fest weekend. And you're trying to sweat the booze out, so you decided to go for a run last night.
Well, yeah, so I am, as I believe I've mentioned before, I'm training for this, like 9-mile trail race that is in 2 weeks from now. And so, I went out to Peninsula State Park here, and they just put in a bunch. It's actually really badass. They put in a whole, like, new trail system. They got this grant from the state where it's a lot of it is like mountain bike specific trails. So they got this company based out of Michigan somewhere that like specializes in building these mountain bike trails. But they also have made a bunch of these multi-purpose trails that can be used for hiking and running as well. And so I decided to go check them out. Some new trails I'd never been on before. And I went out with Matea. We started at the same spot, and she was going on this 3-mile loop, and I was going to go on like 5.5, basically like 5.5. And, we started off and things were great. And then we ran the first mile together. I picked up my pace and pulled away a bit, got on my trail. And then it all started. I just started to notice this like little bit of tightness in my calf. So I was just kind of being really mindful of it and like paying a lot of attention to how I was, my running form and, the type of pressure that I was putting on it and everything. And somewhere along the way, I guess I lost the trail that I was on. And so by the time I realized my mistake, I was, pretty far off, off my path. And so I decided to turn around. And, by this point, it's getting pretty dark early, pretty early up here now. And so now we're starting to lose daylight, and I'm having a little trouble seeing the tiny little like trail marking signs. So I'm doing the best I can to kind of feel my way out. And the next thing you know, I come up to this trail marker, and it is smack dab in the middle of the loop I was running. Like, could not have been further away from the parking lot, and it is officially dark, straight up dark. So I luckily had plenty of cell phone battery, but up here in the woods, absolutely no service. So I no longer felt any pain in my calf as the adrenaline started to kick in, and booked it out of the woods, and found my way out about a mile away from the parking lot. But I was in a spot where I was able to text Tay and let her know where I was, so she was able to get the car and pick me up.
Man, that's got to be scary. I've been on a handful of backpacking trips with you, and you would never be the guy I'd want holding the map or
No
leading.
directions. I mean, not only backpacking trips, but we've been to Europe together.
Yes.
Yeah, I've gotten us lost a lot of times.
Yeah.
It is. Yeah. It's one of those things that I always figure it out. But I guess it's my penchant for adventure. I never
Maybe.
want to. I never want to make it easy.
Maybe.
But yeah, I figured it out. Learned some lessons. The main one being just stay on the trail.
Yeah. And the trail, dude.
It's a loop. It's a loop. If you stay on it, it's going to take you back to where you came from. But then also now, if I'm going to be doing any of these like later day runs, I will have my headlamp with me.
Yeah, bring some
just
light.
in case.
Bring some light.
Yeah.
Maybe, maybe
Lights.
throw an air tag on you and have Matea be tracking you just in case.
Not a bad idea. Not a bad idea. All right. Let's transition to the hot topic of the week. This is an article that you sent me, a WebMD article, all about the weekend warrior. And so this is some good news for people that like to get it in on weekends.
Yeah, not only people that like to get it in on weekends, nice, like to do their exercise on the weekends, but I think just highlights the value in doing kind of the minimum effective dose of exercise. So this was looking at the weekend warrior exercise regimen, which is essentially getting the recommended 150 minutes of moderate to vigorous physical activity in a 2-day period of time, 1 to 2 day period of time. So that's not a lot, right? Like 1 to 2 days of exercise, kind of hitting that 150-minute target. And it resulted in a 26% lower chance of developing dementia. It resulted in a 21% reduction in stroke risk. It resulted in a 45% reduction in the risk of Parkinson's disease. And so that was compared against those who were basically remaining inactive during the week. So this was published in Nature Aging. Study followed more than 75,000 people for almost 9 years. And it's pretty cool. Found they had a 40% lesser chance of depression, 30% lesser incidence of anxiety. So these people are just, it's the time that they have, right? Like most people find themselves pretty stretched during the week. Weekend rolls around, they may have a bit more of it, and this is when they're choosing to do their exercise. And they're still reaping all of these physical and mental benefits that come with exercise. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, and just to clarify, all of those stats that you just rattled off, that is in comparison to people that are inactive.
Yeah.
And so, the cool thing is that if you're one of those people that's like, well, I only have a couple days to get it done, get it done.
Yeah.
There's still you get pretty much the same. There really wasn't a whole lot of difference between a routine that was condensed mainly to this 1 or 2 day period versus people that spread it out for the entire week.
Yeah, so you can still get all these benefits. I think we get locked in this mindset of needing to be perfect, needing to have this really strict regimen, 3, 4, 5 days a week. It doesn't take that much to get the benefits that exercise can provide. What was also kind of cool about this was the average age of the people in the study was 62 years old. So, even if you're aging, which is going to lend itself well to the main topic for the day, because we're going to talk a bit about how to kind of optimally exercise throughout the course of your life through the different decades. But you can still lower your risk of these different, brain related diseases, mental health kind of concerns with depression and anxiety. So 1 to 2 days of exercise is really, really helpful. It doesn't necessarily need to be the weekend. That's what they were looking at here, but it's showing us that just those couple of days can be really effective. So 1 day is better than no days, 2 days better than one, and there's some diminishing that returns that come with exercising too much too. So it doesn't take a ton.
Yeah, no, I mean it is important to realize that these people were still getting their 150 minutes, of moderate to vigorous exercise in a week, and a lot of them weren't doing it, exclusively. It wasn't exclusively in a 2 day period, but they were getting the bulk of those minutes in that 1 to 2 day period. So,
Yep.
that is a lot, if you really are trying to squeeze two 2.5 hours of moderate to vigorous exercise in 1 to 2 days, that's going to be really challenging to sustain over the long term. And so, this might not necessarily be one of those things that you want to adopt as the ultimate training technique for you. But if you're in a spot where, you really like to work out hard, but you don't have a ton of time, but you're wondering if it's worth it, absolutely it is. It's absolutely worth it.
Yep.
Okay. Anything else that we got to say about that? I feel like that's pretty comprehensive.
No. Get it in on the weekends or when you can.
Get it in on the weekends. Let's do it. All right. Back to our newest segment. It's worth it. Dylan, this week you're going to tell us about Factor, which is this new meal replacement or meal delivery service that you've been trying out.
Yeah, so I gave it a shot. I think I mentioned it a few episodes ago. It's a pre-made meal delivery service. So these things show up in a box. They last a week in the fridge. You're not supposed to freeze them, and they're really convenient. You pull them out. You basically pull the plastic off the top, stick it in the oven for a few minutes or in the microwave for a few minutes, and you've got what is marketed as a nutritious meal. You can shop these things by different kind of diet goals, from low calorie to high protein to keto, etc., etc. So it's kind of cool in principle, right? Like people, I think one of the biggest barriers to eating healthy is convenience, and this is sold as sort of convenient, healthy meals, and that's why I wanted to try it. I noted that I've got a 10-month-old at home. Time to cook is a bit more limited now. We found ourselves eating out a bit too much, and so wanted to give this as a try as an alternative. So it's sort of like an alternative to takeout to have maybe a little less impact on the wallet. And there's kind of two factors I want to talk about with regards to whether or not it's worth it. The first is it's advertised as healthy. And these things were certainly high protein. There'd be a chicken dish that was, 40 plus grams of protein at 400 or 500 calories. But they were insanely high in sodium. And I'm guessing that's due to it needing to be preserved to some degree. But I'm talking like ultra processed food levels of sodium in the meal itself. So that's a little concerning. and they were insanely high in saturated fat. Like some of these were 80+% of the recommended daily allowance for saturated fat. So I'm guessing that they're cooking this stuff in a ton of butter or whatever reason, really,
Trying to
really
make
high
it
in
taste
saturated
good.
fat. Trying to make it taste good. Um, and some did taste pretty good. Others were less good. It's not like super delicious. Um, so there's this health factor that I don't really think it lived up to what I expected it to. Probably quite a few ingredients. Um, so it just I don't think it's as healthy as maybe it's advertised.
Yeah,
The other,
and well, okay, so how expensive was it?
yeah. So the other factor I'm considering here is cost, right? Like if I'm going to Chipotle once a week and I'm spending $14 on a burrito bowl, um, does this really help from a cost point of view? They had a promo offer, so I got my first box at 50% off. So for those, it was like $6 a meal, and that made some sense. But that was at 10 meals a week, and 10 meals a week was certainly more than I needed. And as I found my way out of that kind of discount advantage, I think at full cost they were closer to $14 a meal at 10 meals a week. So it's not really saving me any money there either. So then I thought to myself, well, I may still do this because it probably is healthier than running through a Culver's, and is really convenient. So I looked at the option for 4 meals a week, where I could just, Courtney and I could pull it out, once one weeknight and maybe take one for lunch and we'd be set. But when you get down to that level, it's about $20 a meal. So,
Yeah,
and it is absolutely not worth $20 a meal. So,
right.
yeah, I don't think it lived up to what I wanted it to. I think the advantage of the way that our podcast is right now, and I think a promise we can make as we continue to do it and hopefully grow, is we'll never endorse anything that we don't really truly believe in. And, if Factor were to call me and say, I'm going to send you some meals, we want you to promote this, I don't think I'd do it. So my worth it assessment on it is, and I'm probably writing us out of ever having an opportunity to work with Factor, but and I'm sure there's maybe some better alternatives out there that we could look into and maybe try as well. But for me, Factor, not like overly delicious, not as inexpensive as I'd hoped, and really not as healthy as I'd hoped either. So it's a no for me.
Yeah, I mean, I think the tough thing with any of these like meal delivery services is the ability to deliver healthy, delicious food easily, and cost effectively. And that's really the whole rub. It really it's a challenging. It seems like a challenging business to be in, because there's always going to be the need to try and cut costs from a business perspective. So,
Yep.
yeah, I mean, I don't think there's any. It doesn't sound like Factor's trying to do anything nefarious. They're just a business trying to make it, and it just isn't one of those things that, that works well for you, and something that if you are going to try it, obviously, because you assume. A lot of people aren't going to take the time to look at the nutrition facts. They're just going to, and
Yeah.
if they do, they're just going to kind of gloss over it. And so it's one of those things where if you are going to, whether it's a Factor or any of these other, meal delivery services, just because they're branding something as healthy, or and this is even broader than the meal delivery services, just because something is branded as high protein or all natural or whatever the fuck they're using for buzzwords nowadays, it's all marketing. And so you really need
Yeah.
to be the biggest advocate for your own health. Read those labels and just make sure that what they're saying they're actually delivering on. So so it
Yeah.
sounds like worth it. Factor, Dylan,
Not for me.
we got to come with like a catchphrase or something here.
Yeah, we do.
It's like not, no.
No. No
Okay,
go.
boom. Yeah, there it is. And then yeah, no go. All right. We'll work on that. That's a work in progress. All right. Time to transition to the main topic of the day. This is a really fun one that you came up with, Dylan. I like it a lot. It's fitness through the ages, how to train optimally at every stage of life. And when we say every stage, I mean we mean all of them. We're going to start from children and work our way all the way up to to seniors, and give you some good advice as parents, as just advocates for your own health and wellness, how you can live happier, healthier lives at all the stages. So I think there's only one logical place to start, and that is birth. So from birth to what, like eight years old is, probably like that first category.
Yeah, and obviously we probably don't have any 0 to 8 year old listeners to the podcast. So as you pointed out, this is probably more
Archer
for.
Archer tunes in. I make
All
I
right,
make
sweet.
Archer listen.
Sweet. Well, Archer,
So
dude,
we have
just
one.
just get outside, bud, and play. This is really more for the parents, but any 0 to 8 year old listeners that are tuning in as well. I think we wanted to point this out because there have been some studies recently, notably one from the Journal of Physical Education and Sport, that's finding that like doing things like playing, like tumbling. I think this was specifically looking at tumbling is really important for children's spatial awareness, for their problem solving skills. They challenge them to think about their body position in space and execute these different kind of complex motor sequences. So it's really good for like body awareness and proprioception. And I'm really afraid, like as I think about my own kid growing up, that technology is just majorly impinging on playtime. Like I find myself being tempted to just stick my 10-month-old in front of the TV so that I can get something done. Um, but it's so critically important to their development, not only their physical development, but their cognitive development. So I would encourage parents to try to resist that temptation and just play with your 0 to 8 to 10 year old kid as much as you possibly can. Get them outside and just let them figure shit out.
Yeah, I mean, this is something that I have gotten asked more and more, as people start to look at us as authority figures on health and wellness, kind of a crazy position to be in. But, people, do ask, what kind of things should they be doing, with their children? And the biggest thing for me is that unstructured play. We want to put so many things in boxes and categories nowadays. And we'll talk about that those special, like getting into those specialties as you start to get older. But when you're talking about children here, the best thing that you can do is expose them to all different forms of play, to all different forms of exercise. Get them doing something where they're running around for long periods of time. Get them sprinting, get them jumping. But the one thing that I always think it needs to come back to is play. And instead of being like, oh, you gotta do 10 reps of box jumps or jumping jacks, whatever the heck it is. You just want to make something as fun as you possibly can for kids because, then you're developing a good relationship with movement and exercise.
Yeah, I think a lot about how much I love sports and how much I want my son to be into sports as well. But I haven't had to deal with it or address it yet. But I also want to, as he grows up, balance the fact that he should be able to do what he wants to do. I don't want to have like too much influence over that, and so I'm cautious of that. But I will say, if you're interested in sport, you're interested in your kid being good at sports. There is a lot of evidence to gymnastics and tumbling being like fantastic for the development of good athletes if they start at a really
For
young age.
sure.
So, and that won't necessarily like turn them into a super athlete, but to your point, Matt, like it's generally fun too,
It's
and
not
it
going to
gets
hurt.
them around other, yeah, it gets
Hmm.
them around other kids. It gives them that social interaction, some self confidence when they accomplish something new, starts to instill some of that growth mindset. So, if you are looking for something more structured, tumbling gymnastics, it basically is structured play, But I'm with you, man. Like
Right.
just figure out how to make it unstructured. Get outside, mess around, play in the sandbox, chase them around, whatever it is. It's really good for them, and it's good for you too, especially as you age, to get down on the ground and
Totally.
crawl around with your kids. So mutually beneficial
Well,
from
good
that
for your
perspective.
mentals too. Really, really good for your mental health. One thing that I did want to, and I think this category is going to take a little bit longer because I do think that there are some important things to parse out here. One thing that I did want to go over is strength, quote unquote strength training at, and obviously not 0-year olds here. We're talking more of like those 8-year olds here, those as kids start to get older, and this is going to transition more into the next category. But when you have it, it's not to say that a 7 or 8-year old can't be doing exercise based movements. You can definitely, you can teach a 6, 7, 8-year old to do push-ups. They can do, they can certainly, like hang from monkey bars. They can learn the concept of a pull-up. They could even, you could even hand them some light weights, and I mean light weights, and teach them how to do, to do squats or lunges or something like that. But the key with this is form over everything, and well, I mean, fun and form. If you are going to try and introduce some of these strength training movements with children, there definitely can be some benefits. Those improved motor skills and coordination that comes along with it. Obviously, things that we know for adults and seniors. The increased bone density. That boosted confidence that you mentioned. There's so many things that can come along with it. But that's, you'll always, one, if your algorithm, looks anything like mine does right now, it's just like Packers news and then all kinds of like crazy workout stuff. And, you'll see this like 6-year-old girl, benching her body weight, which is cool. And, there is no evidence to show that weight training in young people stunts growth. That was, a myth that, that was, just something that started a long time ago. That we've debunked that. So it's not to say that kids can't be lifting weights, but if you're a parent without much experience yourself in that realm, then please, please, please don't try and make your kid a power lifter. Not yet, because the risk reward for that is just like, it's not worth it.
Yeah, and I think let them figure out their own body before you start introducing some external stimulus as well. So to your point, like as we
Totally.
transition sort of into 7, 8, and really through like 14, like getting into sort of the high school years, if you want to start introducing some things around strength training, I would probably lean more towards, body weight for proprioception and starting to introduce things like resistance bands, suspension trainers are awesome. Like they're fun. You can make it a play-based activity with these suspension trainers. Again, prioritizing safety, but can be a really good way to kind of learn your body and how it moves and how it works in space. So I'm with you. Like you can start to transition into that towards sort of the back end of this. And you're right. I'm glad you pointed out that the whole stunting growth thing's been debunked because I think there's a lot of fear around that. But these aren't the ages for like trying to build maximum muscle by any means. But you can absolutely start to
Well, it's not
learn
going to work
the
anyways.
activity.
Like,
Right.
it's
Yeah.
just like, that's
Right.
like, it's they're not their bodies aren't they're changing so much as it is. They're not in a place where they're even like able, really even able to pack on a ton of muscle, even if you tried. It's just going to lead to detriment down the road.
Yeah, and it shouldn't be the goal here. It should be about health. It should be about building good habits. It should be about
No.
maybe starting to instill some of that growth mindset. So, I think the other thing that's really cool and
Yeah, for sure.
provides major opportunity as you get kind of into the 8+ years, sort of into high school, is the opportunity for sport and athleticism. Like just so incredibly
Hmm.
invaluable for health, for team building, for figuring out how to problem solve, to overcome adversity. The benefits are endless, and from a becoming a good athlete into your high school years point of view, the studies show that the best athletes are the ones that play a lot of different things. They're not the ones
Yeah, that's super important.
where at 6 years old, you decide your kid's going to be a basketball player, and so you're just instilling in them that basketball is the thing that they're going to do. The best basketball players are the ones that played soccer and baseball and football and basketball, because there's all these different kind of skills and athleticism that come from applying yourself to those different sports and learning those different sports that provide major benefit as you get older. So I think in that 8+ towards sort of high school range, it's still play focused. It starts to get more structured with sport, which provides all these benefits, and you can start to look to some of these strength training mechanisms as well.
Yeah, and this is the point in time, where you can certainly start to, and probably should start to introduce, some more like traditional strength training stuff. But I think this is where, and this is where a lot of kids do, they get their first experience in weight rooms. They get their first taste of what weightlifting actually is like. But there is generally such little education and like oversight as to what these kids are doing. A lot of times they're just learning from bigger kids that they see around them. I remember my first time going into a weight room. It was once we were going into our 8th grade summer, we were able to start using the high school weight room. So in summer I'd bike over to Germantown High School, and I would start lifting weights, but there was no coach there. It was just me, a few other, kids who were playing 8th grade football, and then a bunch of high school football players. And so we would just look around at what these guys were doing and just try to mimic them. It's just such a formative time and for so many reasons, but especially as far as your body development goes and learning skills. You are able at that age to really, you're learning so much. But if you are not focused on technique, if you are, if your ego's in the way, which, think about a, 12, 13, 14, 15-year-old kid, up to 18, like ego is huge if it's not kept in check. This is a big reason why, kids do dumb stuff all the time. So when I think about training for those, like teenage years, like late childhood into teenage years, my focus is on unilateral for sure, making sure that before there's any sort of heavy loads or like barbells being implemented, that you're able to, to do your split squats, you're able to do your lunges. We're focusing on balance, we're focusing on core bracing and working on all of those little like skill specific intricate movements that are going to set up the foundation once you start to, to lift heavier weights. So, I think that's something that often gets overlooked. And I think the biggest reason why is because there's not a whole lot of supervision when it comes to kids exercising at these ages.
Yeah, and kids at these ages are so impressionable, and it's really important. There's a real opportunity to help kids build these habits while they're young for a lifelong, health journey. And I think it's really important that we continue to emphasize the fun in it, to make it not something that's work or something but rather in these years, how do we help them build the habits through making it something that's enjoyable? So, whatever that means for you, maybe it's you and your son going to the gym and fucking around for a few hours on a Sunday, whatever it takes. But it should really be about, it's less about like building muscle or becoming a super athlete and more about instilling these healthy habits in kids while they're young so that they can grow into and maintain them throughout their life.
For sure.
As we transition then into like later teen years and really basically what is sort of high school up to maybe like your 20s, these are really like the foundation years. This is where there's real opportunity to your point about skill, to learn the skill, to start to figure out the different components of exercise that are beneficial, to think not only about starting to build some strength, trying out some weights, but also doing things like mobility, pursuing kind of athletic adaptations and focuses as well. So, in my opinion, this kind of high school to 20s years should be building that foundation, should be exploring these different ways to train, should be about learning them, and should be really kind of diverse in the different opportunities for how you could train.
Yeah, I mean, this is the time to learn as much as you can. This should be the educational standpoint here because this is a time when your body is going through a ton of changes, for young boys specifically, getting, into and past that puberty standpoint. Maybe you have hit your growth spurt or are hitting your growth spurt, and so there's just like a ton that's going on, and you got to learn how to use this new body that you've just been presented with. And so, making sure again that you're just setting yourself up for success here, and this is where being an attentive and just really like hands-on parent is so important because so often when it comes to our children's health and wellness, we just don't really put too much thought into it. And it's like, oh well, I'm gonna to make sure that they eat their vegetables and hopefully they're into sports and this and that. But I mean, nowadays especially, it is really easy for kids, especially like high school kids getting into like their young adulthood to miss out on like so much activity that, I mean, even when you and I were that age, that we just kind of took for granted. It was just kind of built into our lifestyles. When we got home from school, there was no, like hopping on, to PlayStation and playing Call of Duty with the boys. If we wanted to go and play video games together, we had to go over to each other's houses and play on the same TV split screen style. And so it's gotten really, really easy for kids to be less and less active nowadays. And so really as parents, because they are, realistically, they're the people that we're speaking to here. We need to take our kids' health and wellness into our hands and make sure that they're getting the proper training that they need. And the best way that you can do that is to live a healthy, active, curious lifestyle yourself, and making sure that you have those good foundations, so that the kids that are looking up to you, have a good role model.
Yeah, they're going to replicate what you model. And I think to your point about education, it's not only educating yourself on these different modalities of training and how to do them well, but the benefits of exercise and training. Like there needs to be more to it than, and I think in the high school years it's really easy, right? Like your kid's good at football, so we want to get him strong and we want to get him fast. Like that makes a ton of sense. But what if your kid's into theater? It's still important that they're building these healthy habits, and so it has to be about more than just sport, which is very obvious and kind of inherent in many high school students' lives, but not every single one. And so, what does it look like for the kid that isn't into sports? How do we ensure that they're still getting outside, that they're still, building some strength, that they're still learning how to use that body that they're growing into? And you're right. I mean, a lot of it has to do with living it yourself, but I think there's opportunities to educate around that as well to ensure that there's buy-in, even if they're not planning on trying to make the varsity team.
For sure. Yeah, that's a great point. All right. The next age range is like now you're out of high school. You're in your 20s into that mid 30s. And this is this is the time to put in the work. You hopefully have a really solid foundation. Hopefully you've got good technique. You've got a good cardio base. Everything is kind of starting to hum for you. And now you can really start to experiment with getting after it.
Yeah, these are the results years. Like this is to your point. Like when you're 0 to 8, doesn't matter what you do, you're not going to build any muscle. From
Right.
20 to your mid 30s, you are a muscle building machine. Like you're at your peak hormone levels, your testosterone's rocking, your growth factor's way up, which is going to help you build muscle and it's going to help you recover. The opportunity, especially kind of in those 20s years, is as much about the ability to build muscle as it is to recover from the workout so that you can do another one. I think we'll talk about as you get older, you got to be much more cautious of taking the time to recover. So if you're in your 20s and you're listening to this podcast, this is your opportunity to go, to build that muscle, to build it quickly. Your metabolism's rocking. You're in those younger years. You can, eat well, but eat, in alignment with your goal and see some really good results. So there's tons of opportunity in this kind of decade plus. The other huge advantage you have here is lifestyle flexibility. Like as you get into your 30s, your later 30s, you may have a family, you got, job commitments. You just don't have the same time and flexibility to be training as frequently. So take advantage of that while you're in college or post college before you're married and have kids and really get after it because there's tons of biological opportunity that's just inherent in your 20s and early 30s.
Yeah, and this is the time to that where if you really can start to get into that heavy strength training, you can start to get more of that like hypertrophy focus, starting to sculpt that body that you want to have. But you can also start to really like play with other modalities. You can this is a good opportunity, if you want to try something different, like that interval training. You're at a good age where you have a solid foundation, but you still have a ton of recoverability. It's never too early to start working on, like mobility and flexibility stuff, whether that be like the yoga or, just like some form of stretching and like recovery practice. This is really like the decade or era, I guess, where you start to see a ton of separation between the people that are buying in and the people that aren't. And we're kind of at the tail end of of this era. Where we're leaving we're leaving our mid 30s, and when you look around at people our age, and it is very easy to tell the people that exercise and the people that don't. When you're in high school or certainly before that, everybody kind of looks the same, and you have people that are naturally going to be more athletic looking, people that are naturally not aren't going to have that same physique, but now is really when you can start to tell the people that have made this a habit, are making exercise a habit, and the people that haven't. And so, this really is, like you said, I love that. It's time to get after it. This is the results years, and time to really have some fun with it.
Yeah, you bet. So then as we transition out of our early 30s, and this starts to get a bit existential for me because tomorrow is my 34th birthday.
That's right, man.
So I'm I'm a little worried about what it might mean to be leaving this period of my life, but I can tell you that I've started to feel it and notice the change that I think we're going to talk about here. So as you get into your kind of mid to later 30s, really through like your 50s, there's still certainly opportunity to build muscle, to be strong, to train for hypertrophy. But I think the thing that'll start to fall off, there's two things really. One is the recovery. Like your body is just not going to recover as quickly. And so you need to be much more intentional about programming that in, about maybe doing a little bit less. And I think you'll actually start to find, I've started to find that there is like this optimal dose of training, and that when I was in my early, 20s, I could train 5 days a week as hard as I wanted, get up the next day and do it again, no problem. And now, if I do that, I actually won't see as good of results. I have to really scale it back in order to see those, and that's because the gym is just for giving the stress. The muscle building occurs while you're recovering, and you just require a bit more of it as you kind of age a bit. So I think that recovery factor is key, and then the other is really around mobility. Like you spent more time kind of sedentary at a desk, whatever it is. Your body just does start to age, and so you do have to work on those kinks a little bit more and give more devoted time to mobility. So I think into those mid 30s towards sort of your 50s, those are the kind of two differences from the 20s to 30s. You can kind of train in the same way. You just have to be much more intentional about mobility and recovery.
Yeah, you have learned what low back pain feels like. You now know what a stress headache feels like. And things are probably not moving as well as they did when you were in your 20s. But that is not an excuse, and it certainly is not this, oh well, just getting older type
Yeah.
thing. It just means that you have to adapt. That's the biggest thing, is you're not going to train the same way in your 20s as you are in your in your 40s, and that's great. But I think one of the things that is super important, Dylan, now, as somebody who is entering their mid 30s, you got to watch out for some sarcopenia. So what is sarcopenia, for the people that don't know? That is naturally the natural decline of muscle mass. And this starts to happen anywhere. Everybody's a little bit different, but generally it starts to happen around the mid 30s and accelerates as you get older. So our muscle mass in our mid 30s begins to decline. So this is a time when it becomes really important to double down on the strength training. And that doesn't mean that you are necessarily going to be lifting heavier weights, or, to your point, even training anymore. You just need to make sure that it becomes a priority. Even if it's something that you're only able to get in a couple days a week, you need to have a legitimate program. Everybody should have a program. 20-year-olds should have programs. But as well as I did, when we were in our teens and 20s walking into the gym, what did it look like? Oh, well, what do you think we should do today? Well, probably some bench. And then every third day it would be like, well, I suppose we should probably do legs. But when you're in your mid 30s into your 40s into your early 50s, having a regimented plan becomes super important, because your body is now, it is starting to work against you a little bit. So if you don't, almost, you kind of got to trick it into making it think that, it needs, it needs to maintain this muscle. And not only that, it needs to keep building new muscle. So I think that having an emphasis on strength training with that, with that intelligent recovery built in, and having that, that design, that really well functioning program, becomes super important.
Yeah, for me these would be like the get a trainer years. Like have
Yeah.
somebody that
Yeah.
like is going to help you kind of navigate all this, cuz um a lot of it can be just about having a good program that's tailored to somebody your age as well, which a trainer would provide. For me, it sort of transitions out of your 20s and early 30s from the ability to just pursue intensity and really go hard at it, to making the focus much more about being consistent, and just consistent over time for that kind of 20-year period of time from your mid 30s to your mid 50s, will help maintain that muscle, build more muscle. You can write that sarcopenia off altogether. Like, it won't occur
Right.
for you at those ages if you stay consistent with this and have that focus on maintaining and building that muscle. I do want to note, I'm glad you brought up programming. I think to your point about you and I walking into gyms in our 20s and just fucking around on any machine we felt like that day or with whatever free weights we felt like, if you're in your 20s and you want to get a leg up on everybody else that's training around you, get yourself a good program. That will serve you so well. If I could rewind time, the number one thing I would do in my 20s is be more organized with how I pursued my strength training, because I was on this roller
Yeah.
coaster of kind of gain it, lose it, and certainly not training optimally to achieve the best results. And there's so much opportunity in those years to build a foundation. So I'm with you on the programming front. But yeah, I mean, this is the
Well,
age.
and
Go ahead.
yeah, no, well, so what maybe as I've done in the past, I'm going to take the words right out of your mouth here, but this is the time where you need to be efficient with
Yeah.
your workouts because, like you said, in your 30s to 50s, maybe you've got a family, you probably have a job that requires more of you than any other job that you've ever had in your entire life. Stress levels tend to be higher in these decades than any other time in your life. And so really, having that, efficient workout can become your best friend because you really do need something where unlike when you're 20 and you're like, oh, well, we're going to go to the gym until we don't feel like going to the gym anymore and then we're going to go out after. Now it becomes super important because maybe you do only have a few hours in the week that it could possibly work, and so it's something that becomes really important to make as time efficient as possible.
Yeah, man. And then we kind of transition to this category, which we'll call sort of 50s and up. So 50s sort of through the rest of your life. Um, and I sort of think of this as like the show up your friends years,
I
because
like that.
you can absolutely tell, the 50-plus-year-old people that are still paying attention to their fitness and health. Um, this is where that sarcopenia really starts to accelerate at about age 50. You're going to lose muscle quickly. Your body just biologically will be working against you. Like that's just what happens in life. And you can put off a lot of that through giving time and attention to continuing to focus on maintaining that muscle, by strength training with a strength focus, by really focusing on that mobility so that, as your joints start to age, you aren't limited in what you can do. And, the underlying thread in all this, I think, especially as we get out of our 20s, is we should be giving some focus to cardiovascular health as well. So this isn't really just about strength training, but the risk for cardiovascular disease and heart disease and heart attack, etc., increases as we age. And the number one thing that we can do to mitigate against that risk is to exercise for our heart health, and that's cardiovascular type stuff. You can achieve some of that through strength training, but given some time to go for a vigorous walk, to go for a jog, to get on a bike, whatever it is, to go play pickleball. Really important in our mid 30s into our 50s and beyond. So I think as you get into your 50s and up, continue to strength train. You're not too old to do it. Maybe you've never strength trained before. Start to strength train. We talked about in that
Uh,
first study, those were 62-plus-year-old people that were mitigating the risk factors for all those brain related diseases just through picking up some strength training a couple days a week. So it's critically important. These are not lost years. This just as important into your 50s to the day you die as it was when you were 25 years old.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that especially in those like 50 plus years, there starts to become a lot of fear around exercise, especially for people that, either never got into it at all in, when they were younger, or people that, were more active when they were younger. And then, the whole, the classic story, had a family, got busy with work. And then all of a sudden, they go from, somebody who, went to the gym 3, 4, 5 times a week to somebody that hasn't, that's simply just been paying their Planet Fitness membership for the last decade. But, now maybe they're an empty nester or, whatever the case may be, and they're starting to take their life back. And there's a lot of fear that is, that can be surrounding getting, back in the saddle. And so, I think that it's one of those things that the first thing that people need to realize is it's never too late to get started. Obviously the best time to plant the tree was 10 years ago, but the second best time is today. And, so if you're going to, if you're putting off, if you're somebody that is in, their, that, 50 plus category and well, whatever age you are, if there is fear surrounding, taking back control of your health and wellness, just understand that all of the research, all of it is indicating that it's never too late to start. And there's so much, even as far as, you mentioned the cardiovascular stuff, which is incredibly important. But the strength training stuff too. I've got some in-person clients that I see in their 70s that are doing really impressive stuff with weight training. And, that doesn't mean that we're doing, super heavy barbell back squats or anything like that. But we are doing, we're finding ways to use heavy weights. And it is because of that increased bone density. It is because of, thinking about the things that Peter Attia mentions with grip strength. And it is, and the way that is a really great indicator of longevity. There's so many things that being strong benefits as you get older. And so if you're not there yet, that's okay. You can get there.
Yeah, the final point I want to make here is we've gotten, as a society, as sort of a medical community, we've gotten really good at extending the quantity of life. Like we have medical interventions, drugs, etc., that can keep people alive for a very, very long time. But we haven't matched quality of life with that quantity. And as a result of that, we have a lot of people that are living to 90 plus years old, but their quality of life deteriorates significantly at 70. So they're living 20 years sort of miserably because we've gotten so good at increasing the quantity of life, but we aren't living those years well. We haven't extended the health span. We're just extending the lifespan. And the number one way that you can not only live longer, but live longer better is to maintain your strength, your ability to move, your cardiovascular health, all of these things, so that when you live to 90, you get to see your kid live to 65, and you get to see your grandkids live to 35, and you get to do it with them. They're not necessarily having to take care of you. And so I think there's real opportunity in this. We shouldn't be sort of writing these things off in older age. So I talk with my parents about this all the time, who are, in their mid 60s, and they've gotten more into strength training and prioritizing fitness and exercise. And I can tell, like, they're with my grandkid playing on the floor, and they're moving around very well. And I go on backpacking trips with my dad, and that means a lot to me. And so I think it's really important. I hope people take that to heart, and I hope that we aren't afraid to continue to pursue fitness into older age, but also get started if it's not something that we're working on right now.
That's it. Perfectly said. All right. I don't know if you have a listener question of the day for us, but I have a podcast host question.
Oh,
that I would like to ask. I'd like to ask you, because as you mentioned before, it's your birthday tomorrow. You're going to be 34, and so I've spent some time on this show talking about my current fitness goals. I'm gonna bench 315 by the end of this year. I'm training for a 9-mile trail run in a couple of weeks. And I wanted to know, you have spent, obviously, there's been a crazy last year for you, becoming a father, really making other things a priority while, while keeping your fitness. So I'm curious if you have anything, anything as you look forward to this next year, something that you're hoping to accomplish in the fitness space. Is there something that you're excited about? Something that's just kind of like sitting in the back of your brain, is something that you want to focus on in this next year?
Yeah, so my brother-in-law, Matt Wood, shout out Matt. He's an active listener, and I
He's
have
the best listener.
he is he's a good listener. Um, he actually shared with me that the other day he was listening to the podcast in the car, and we were talking about coffee enemas, and
Yeah,
he was
I
driving
remember.
downtown Milwaukee, and he had his window rolled down and was at a stoplight, and somebody was right outside the window, and he had the volume up, and I said something to the degree of "Don't stick coffee up your asshole," and the person outside looked into the car like, "What the fuck are you listening to, dude?" So I got a kick out of that. But anyways, he and I have decided, he's got a couple kids himself, that we go over to his folks' house on Thanksgiving every year. And so we've decided on Thanksgiving Day, before Thanksgiving, lunch, dinner, we're gonna do a max squat, bench, and deadlift every year, and sort of track our
Oh, I love
metrics
that.
over time, just to see, as we approach our mid 30s and start to age further, how we're maintaining those things. And it's not going to be like an ego lift by any means, but just to sort of see what we're capable of. I'm not like training specifically for it. So to answer your question about my training, I think I'm going to try to take advantage of maybe my pre-35 year here to pack on some more if I can, but also start to find that balance and transition to a place where I do need to be giving more time to mobility. I need to be giving more time to cardiovascular health. So start to incorporate some of that as well. But as it gets kind of dark and cold in Wisconsin, I get this itch to just like push it. So I have to be careful. I do have to recognize that I am getting a bit older. But yeah, it's very much about seeing what's left in the tank to build. I think you can certainly build into your 40s and 50s, but doing it in a smart way, doing it in a way that doesn't turn me into somebody that can't chase my kid around the yard or show him up on the basketball court when I'm 40, 50 years old. So um, yeah, man, it's a fun thing to think about. Maybe I'll give some more reflection to it, but that's sort of where I'm at right now.
I love it. I love it. I might have to join you, not in person, because I've got my own Thanksgiving rituals here, but I might need to make Thanksgiving maxes a part of the routine as well. I think that's
I love
badass.
that, and we'll find out how close you are to 315.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, actually, I am due. I'm due for a check-in here soon, and I'm feeling good. I do not think I'm ahead of schedule. I think I'm going to take. I think I'm going to take the entire year, but I'm going to get it done.
I'd love to do 1,000 pounds once before.
What, you mean the 1,000 club, like
Yeah,
bench, squat, deadlift, 1,000 pounds.
yeah,
3. So let's see. What did you deadlift when we were up here?
400,
What?
420.
Yeah, okay, you're on it. You
I'm
can do it.
close, but I don't think I can deadlift 420 today. I haven't been deadlifting much. I've been doing a lot more.
Yeah, but
kind
if
of
you want, like, yeah, but
stuff.
if you were training, you got it.
Yeah.
I have full faith in you.
So maybe that's my goal, and that I'll have to update on. I'll let you guys know where I'm at after this Thanksgiving, and maybe we'll shoot to improve by the next one.
I love it.
Sad
Is it time to
song.
bring it home? Here we
Let's do
go.
it.
All right, the I Lift to Sad Song of the Week, brought to you by the I Lift to Sad Songs tank top in the Basic Trainer store. Get yours today. One day I'm going to see somebody. I'm going to see somebody in the wild wearing one, and it's going. I'm going to give that person a free hug. That person will become my new best friend. Until that day, I'm going to keep wearing mine proudly. Dylan, you might. So I have 2 here because I'm going to say my first one, but there is a chance it's such an obvious one it might have been an early pick. I don't remember choosing it, but if you chose this in an early episode, let me know. It's a song that you and I both know very, very well. It's Thunder by Boys Like Girls.
Oh, I don't think that's on there.
I don't think we did either. I think
That's a
that was a
great one.
huge miss on our part.
Huge, massive.
Yeah, that's massive.
I'm
That's a
excited
sad
to
song
work
we
up
used to
one.
live to. We used yeah, back in high school.
Yeah, man.
So, anyways, Thunder by Boys Like Girls.
Awesome,
That's
man.
it.
Yeah.
All right, everybody. We'll see you next time.